Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Win Bugs and Influence Hackers. My name's Adam Bacchus. I'm a Senior Program Manager in Android Security. Today, we'll talk about what a vulnerability disclosure program is, why you should bother considering creating one, how to determine if you're ready, and how to actually set up, launch, and run your program. So what is a VDP? Well, a vulnerability disclosure program enables your organization to work with hackers to uncover and fix vulnerabilities in your assets. At the most basic level, a VDP lets you work with hackers that find vulnerabilities and report them directly to you. You respond and say, yep, this is a real vulnerability, we'll look into that, or no, sorry, this is a false positive and here's why. You update the hacker as you progress towards remediation, and in addition to finding and fixing one-off bugs, you can use this data to improve your overall security program by identifying why each vulnerability was not caught internally. So, sounds pretty simple. Open the door, work with friendly hackers of the world, find and fix vulnerabilities, reduce the risk of a breach and PR fallout. Easy, right? Well, before you dive straight in, you might want to consider everything that could go horribly wrong. There are a lot of reasons why you may not want to start a vulnerability disclosure program. You may already feel like your security resources are stretched pretty thin. What if you can't respond to reports or fix bugs fast enough? What if internal stakeholders would not even go for the idea of working with hackers? What if hackers go rogue and steal data or cause service interruptions? These are all valid considerations. While it's relatively easy to spin up a VDP with nothing more than a web page and a security at email address, if you really want to truly benefit from a VDP, you first need to understand the true value of having one, be able to achieve buy-in from necessary stakeholders with that understanding, prepare yourself and your organization, and then launch your own VDP. This seems like a ton of work, so why bother? To help illustrate the value of a VDP, I'd like to tell you a quick story about Bob and his nuggets. That's right, Bob's Nuggets. Bob's Nuggets is an app that helps users buy and sell precious metals from each other. The app handles a lot of sensitive user data, such as name, your gold inventory, your birthday, home address, phone number, you name it, it's in the app. Enter Abby, a security consultant that likes to find and squish security bugs, as well as an avid precious metal trader who is a user of the Bob's Nuggets app. While using the app, she creates a second test account and discovers a vulnerability that enables her to see user data in her second test account from her primary account. Abby realizes this vulnerability could be used to access the data of any user in Bob's Nuggets app without authorization. This is pretty bad. So reasonably, Abby is concerned about the presence of this vulnerability and wants to inform Bob's Nuggets so they can fix it. What do you think happens next? Well, one possible scenario plays out like this. Abby tries to figure out how to report the vulnerability to Bob's Nuggets, but she can't find any way to contact them other than a support email address. Bob's Nuggets support staff are not trained in security and they don't know what to do with the report. They're confused by it, they don't really understand it, and they don't give her a satisfactory response. Abby gets frustrated and decides to blog or perhaps tweet about the vulnerability. A tech journalist sees Abby's tweet and publishes a negative article about Bob's Nuggets exposing user data. Bob and his team have to scramble to fix the bug and handle PR fallout, financial loss, and other negative impacts from the incident. Let's hit reset. Starting over again, let's assume that Bob's Nuggets has rolled up their sleeves and done the work to create a VDP. Abby Googles for report vulnerability to Bob's Nuggets, discovers a page describing Bob's VDP and how to report vulnerabilities to them. Abby reports the vulnerability privately and directly to Bob's Nuggets via their program. Bob and his team review the report. They thank Abby and they're able to fix the bug. And due to Abby's great experience interacting with Bob's team, she uses her security expertise to continue to find and report vulnerabilities to Bob's Nuggets moving forward. Bob even considers interviewing and hiring Abby to help augment his information security team. Much better narrative. So there are many benefits to creating a vulnerability disclosure or bug bounty program. Having a structured process for accepting vulnerability reports helps points researchers in the right direction of issues and properties that you care about and away from the issues you don't care about. As opposed to one-off security testing, having a program like this in place enables you to receive vulnerability reports from researchers as bugs are introduced into production, as opposed to, for example, once a quarter or once a year pen tests. In addition to identifying individual vulnerabilities, any bug reported to your program indicates a gap in your existing security processes. By performing root cause analysis, you can determine how to improve your existing security processes to reduce the risk of such vulnerabilities making it into your production environment moving forward. Some view having a VDP as admitting weakness in your existing security program, but nobody has perfect security. VDPs and BBPs are an extension of your existing security program and are particularly helpful to crowdsource security skill sets and resources that might not already exist within your team. Publicly discussing your VDP can help position you as taking security seriously, and many organizations use this as positive PR and as a competitive advantage against peers that do not have such programs in place. Hopefully I've sold you on the benefits of a VDP, so how do you know if you're ready to start one? Before we jump in, I'd like to plug the Vulnerability Disclosure Program Guide on Play Academy. It covers these topics in much more detail. There'll be a link to it at the end of the stack. You can Google for it or just ping me if you'd like the link or have any questions about any of this stuff. The following will be a much higher level version of how to know if you're ready, how to prepare for, and how to launch your Vulnerability Disclosure Program. First things first, how does your organization handle vulnerabilities today? If every vulnerability leaves you scrambling and panicked like this poor fellow on the left, you might need to cover some basics first, such as asset management, knowing your attack surface, having developed a means for performing basic security assessments and reviews to identify issues, and having basic vulnerability management in place. In other words, being able to gracefully handle new security bugs as they pop up. You'll also want to consider what security culture looks like at your org today. Is hacker considered a bad word by default, or is hacking a core tenet of company culture? When someone says hacker, do you picture someone like this, baking up ransomware and doing other evil things like, I guess, sending horse emojis? Do you have a solid relationship between security, engineering, and other parts of your organization? And where does security fit in the priority stack for leadership? Before you launch a VDP, coming back to what we talked about earlier, you'll want the basics of finding bugs in place. If you already have this set up, I apologize for the next few slides, but maybe you'll still learn something new. If you don't have the basics in place and start a VDP prematurely, you'll end up burning a lot of energy and resources on basic issues you could have identified and fixed yourself internally with much less effort. So when you're finding bugs and you're looking at basic vulnerability scans, first you need to think of, what am I scanning? Do you have asset management in place? Do you have a good understanding of your attack surface? After that, you have to decide what tools you want to use, determining the requirements in terms of automating scheduling, requirements templates that you could maybe look at that you have internally for evaluating tools, and I have one that I can share with you as well. Basically thinking what's important to you in your organization, and then choosing tools based on that. When it comes to scanning setup, what do you want to consider there? How often do you scan? Are you scanning with or without credentials? Who's on duty if something goes wrong, if a system goes down? And lastly, what do you actually do with the scan output? You can know that the sky is falling, you can know all these vulnerabilities are present, but unless you have an umbrella or some cloud tape when the sky is falling on your head, it doesn't really mean much. Security only improves when bugs are fixed, not when they're found. In addition to getting your basic vulnerability scans in place, you'll want to process setup for security reviews. More in-depth security reviews should occur whenever changes happen that could introduce new risks. This includes creating new functionality or modifying existing functionality that handles or impacts sensitive user data and functionality, changes to your production environment, and bringing on new vendors that may have access to sensitive data. In terms of how to request a review from the security team, the easier you make it to request a review and work with the security function in your org, the more likely it is to actually happen. How you build this is up to you, but having a forum of some sort that gathers relevant context and helps you prioritize the review request based on potential risk will optimize your resources, which brings us to performing reviews. Consider varying the depth of your review based on the potential risk. If someone is spinning up a one-off third-party hosted marketing website to share info on a holiday party, it'll probably require less scrutiny than a review of new functionality impacting how users log into your app. This might seem obvious, but having well-defined, agreed-upon processes on what constitutes a high versus medium versus low-risk security review will help set expectations appropriately throughout your organization in terms of how much effort will be spent on it, how urgently the review needs to be completed, and so on. If your security review process is inefficient and becomes a bottleneck, people will take the path of least resistance and try to find ways around it or skip it entirely. Be compassionate, understand the needs of the business, and try to balance that with what is and is not required in order to pass or complete the security review successfully. Last but not least, and this is a sticky point for some organizations, you'll need to determine how to handle the output of your reviews. Will security reviews always block a change? Probably not. You may recommend a variety of improvements and fixes to reduce risk, but how do you know what will actually be implemented? Similar to the output of scans, you'll need to take a nuanced approach to balancing how hard you chase after ensuring certain recommendations are followed versus what is considered acceptable risk, the timeline of acting on these recommendations, and so on. There are whole books, talks, and conferences dedicated to finding bugs, so please spend some time digging deeper to find out what makes sense for your organization. But having basic tooling and processes in place for vulnerability scanning and security reviews can go a long way towards preparing you for launching a vulnerability disclosure program. So assuming you've got tooling and processes in place to find bugs, how do you make sure these bugs actually get fixed? In the next few slides, we'll cover best practices to ensure you have smooth processes in place for handling discovered security issues. If you start a VDP without these basics in place, your team can become overwhelmed by the new stream of bugs a vulnerability disclosure program will generate. Vulnerabilities can come from a variety of sources and vary greatly in importance. Perhaps most importantly, newly discovered vulnerabilities are almost always unexpected work. Especially when teams are already busy, it can be really tough to negotiate buy-in to spend time to fix up security issues. To ensure vulnerabilities are communicated to the right stakeholders, prioritized correctly, and fixed in a timely manner, your organization will need ways to consistently categorize vulnerability data. If you don't already have agreed upon severity standards and associated remediation timelines, consider doing a threat modeling exercise to identify what threats are most likely to impact your organization. With this knowledge in hand, you can create a shared understanding of what constitutes a critical, high, medium, or low severity issue, and identify associated timelines with each severity for identifying an owner, as well as fixing or mitigating the issue. This table is just an example, but it could be adjusted to meet the needs of your business in terms of what types of issues fall into which severity and what timelines make sense based on the available resources. For example, a financial institution may consider a vulnerability that provides unauthorized access to your proprietary trading algorithms to be critical severity. On top of how a bug is categorized, you'll want to make it as easy as possible to understand what the bug is and how to fix it. This table illustrates some common fields to include in the bugs that you file. By standardizing the format of your vulnerability write-ups, they become easier to parse or digest and more likely to get picked up and fixed. When you set up and launch your VDP, you can also use this format when asking external security researchers to provide information on the bugs that they submit to you. As mentioned previously, vulnerabilities are often a source of unexpected work. When trying to find an owner to review and address a vulnerability, first explain why the bug is important to fix in a timely manner and check in to ensure the owner understands. In this step, the impact and attack scenario from your vulnerability write-up, as well as the severity table, are really good data points to help persuade an owner to take on and fix the bug. Let's say you try all of that and nobody will step up. No one will step up to own and fix this bug. In these cases, it's important to gather context, especially around other tasks they're working on. Take the time to find out what these are. It's possible that other tasks may be more important than fixing the vulnerability that you're trying to push to this person to take care of. You can earn goodwill and strengthen your relationship with those that you need to fix vulnerabilities by demonstrating empathy and flexibility on remediation timelines with that understanding of the other stuff they're working on. Another reason you might have trouble getting the bug fixed is that the owner might be confused on what the issue is, or maybe they just need help learning how to fix the bug. If they need help figuring out how to fix the issue, take the time to help teach them. This will empower owners to fix not only this bug, but also future similar vulnerabilities. In some cases, you may need to adapt your request beyond just filing a bug with your standard vulnerability write-up. Various teams may have existing processes for how they accept and prioritize work requests. Take the time to adapt your request to fit the format the team or individual normally uses to intake requests. This can help increase the likelihood of your request being prioritized and actioned. If all else fails, only escalate as a last resort. Escalating to leadership should be a last resort for critical issues that are not being taken seriously. Again, if you're going to do this, just be aware this can damage your relationship with the individual or team in question. All right, our bug wrangling processes are set up. We're done, right? No, not yet. It's time to get everybody on board with the idea of launching a vulnerability disclosure program. When pitching your VDP, consider the various stakeholders' perspectives, especially your own security function, engineering, legal, and PR, including any potential concerns they might have, as well as how you can shift your pitch for creating a VDP towards benefits specific to each function. IT wants to keep everything up and running smoothly. They may have concerns around researchers going rogue and crashing systems, causing denial of service attacks, and so on. Here's the thing. Criminals don't play by the rules. Criminals will scan and exploit vulnerabilities to their heart's content, whether you like it or not. The whole point of a VDP is to work with friendly researchers that want to work with you to find vulnerabilities. In fact, having a VDP can help you uncover vulnerabilities that could degrade system performance or cause issues that would take up even more of IT's time if they were exploited versus finding and fixing these issues quickly. On top of that, security researchers' recon processes can also help with asset discovery, uncovering rogue assets that were spun up without IT's knowledge, old services that were never spun down, and properly configured cloud storage. The list goes on. Unless your security function takes on the task of fixing all identified vulnerabilities themselves, you'll need your engineering organization on board with your VDP as well. Your VDP will introduce a new stream of vulnerabilities that your Eng team will need to address. Work with leadership in the Eng organization and try to get buy-in on dedicating resources towards fixing these bugs. When a VDP launches, there's usually a spike of bugs at the beginning, and then it reduces to a more moderate level. You can make this process smoother for engineering, security, and hackers participating in your vulnerability disclosure program by having the engineering team ready to address the majority of bugs in the first few weeks of your program. Legal and PR may be concerned with the risk a VDP could introduce in terms of a potential breach and its associated ramifications. Without a VDP, security researchers that want to do the right thing and inform you of issues that they find will have no standard way of reaching you. Having a VDP in place provides a means for security researchers to help you find and fix vulnerabilities, hopefully before they become actual legal and PR issues. All right, so you've got the basics in place, you're comfortable handling bugs, necessary stakeholders are on board, it's time to create your VDP. The first thing you'll need to do is create your program policy. This is the first thing any security researcher participating in your program will see. The program policy will set the tone for how you engage with hackers, as well as define your expectations for testing guidelines and scope. It usually takes the form of a web page, either hosted internally or on a third-party platform that provides the ability to create and host a VDP. When drafting your program policy, don't forget to include your stakeholders for feedback and review. The last thing you want is to launch your VDP only to have to make last-minute changes once it's live. The content of your policy will vary based on your organization's needs, but there are 3 elements you should include: researcher promise, testing guidelines, and scope. Every good program policy should begin with your promise to researchers. Excuse me. This should include what commitments your organization will make to coordinate with security researchers that act in good faith and that follow the testing guidelines outlined in your policy. For example, this could be a commitment to respond to incoming security reports within a specific time frame and communicate decisions on whether you will accept and fix a vulnerability report or not. Additionally, you may want to include safe harbor language in this section of your policy to allow security researchers to work on your platforms in good faith without fear of legal action. Disclose.io provides template safe harbor language you can use, but you'll need to work with your legal team to evaluate this language and adapt it to your needs. The second element, testing guidelines, indicates what sort of security testing that you're okay with, as well as what types of security testing you would like researchers to stay away from. For example, you might include language asking researchers to only test using their own accounts and their own data, and to stay away from social engineering or any attacks that might cause service disruptions. Lastly, you'll need to consider what the scope of your program is, indicating to researchers what assets are in scope, meaning you're okay with researchers testing against it, as well as what assets are out of scope that you'd prefer researchers not to test against, at least for now. The size of your scope is critical to researcher engagement. It's good to start small and scale up, but if you only put a single website in the scope with no authenticated functionality, hackers will probably be uninterested in testing as the likelihood of finding bugs is low. There's really nothing to do here. You'll want to balance this with putting everything in scope, as you may end up with more vulnerability reports than you have the capacity to handle. This can cause delays in responding to security researchers, which can also decrease engagement with your program. Finding the right balance of what assets to put in scope is vital. This will keep hackers engaged while not overwhelming your team. You can always add more to your scope over time. When it comes to actually writing up your scope in your program policy, here's a detailed example for a domain related to email. It includes a description of the asset as well as detailed instructions on how to test against it. Here's a more simple example that just simply lists assets that are in scope and out of scope. It's up to you how detailed or not detailed you like to get with your scope, but the more information you provide, the easier it will be for researchers to start finding and reporting vulnerabilities to you. All right, we're finally there. Exciting. It's time to launch your VDP. We've got well-established processes, stakeholders are on board, and our program policy is drafted. Let's go over best practices before you go live. When you first launch your VDP, you'll want to have a few people on duty to triage incoming vulnerability reports, file bugs, and communicate with researchers. On top of handling vulnerability reports, triaging your VDP can include responding to feedback from hackers, identifying gaps or misunderstandings in your program policy, finding issues in your processes or tooling, and so on. Since this is highly interrupt-driven work, you can set up a weekly on-duty rotation to share the load across your team. To ensure your on-duty team doesn't get overwhelmed, let's talk about the concept of private and public programs. You want to start out small by proactively inviting 4, maybe 5 trusted external security researchers to view your program policy and give them a means of submitting vulnerability reports directly to you. This could be a security email address or a web form that only invited researchers can access. Setting up your vulnerability disclosure program this way gives you a private or invite-only style program that lets you test the waters at a comfortable pace. A public program, on the other hand, involves publishing your program policy and means for receiving reports for anyone to see. Starting public immediately can result in many issues, including having way more reports than your team can handle, as well as not giving you enough time to work out any issues in your program at a smaller scale. So again, start small. There will always be surprises when you launch your VDP. You might receive more vulnerabilities than expected. Someone from your team might unexpectedly become unavailable, leaving you with less resources, or during the course of testing, a researcher might accidentally break part of your app. Like, who knows what could go wrong? Whatever these surprises might be, it's important to be aware that they can happen and roll with the punches, as well as plan ahead of time to ensure you have the bandwidth to handle them. This is why it's important to start small in private mode, learn from these lessons, and scale up your program over time. You might get a ton of reports in your first few weeks, or you might not get any. Inviting security researchers does not mean that they will instantly be available or find vulnerabilities immediately. You might start to worry thinking all of your hard work has gone to waste. Don't worry, this is normal. This is when you'll want to scale up slowly. Invite 5 more security researchers, see what your report volume looks like, and then invite 10 more. If you're using a third-party platform, they do have automated mechanisms in place that will invite hackers slowly over time based on your desired report volume. If you get a huge number of vulnerability reports after only inviting 5 security researchers, hold off inviting any more until your report volume slows down. Once you're feeling comfortable with your processes, you've invited numerous security researchers, and report volume seems to have hit a steady pace, you may be ready to launch your program publicly. A public program includes a publicly accessible program policy and submission form. When you launch publicly, anyone can submit a vulnerability report. This can generate a lot more noise, but also enables you to work with new, highly skilled hackers. Your public VDP allows the global hacking community to disclose vulnerabilities directly to you. Only publicly launch your program after scaling it up in private mode. When you launch publicly, reconnect with stakeholders in case you need assistance, and prepare your team for another potential spike in report volume. Again, Once you launch publicly, anyone can submit a vulnerability report, so this can greatly increase the throughput of your program. You'll also want to have templates in place to close out common non-security related reports quickly. You'll learn what the common non-issues are that are reported to you during your private program phase. And when you launch publicly, you might uncover more of these, so you'll iterate further on these templates once you launch publicly. All right, thanks for taking the time to listen to this talk. I'd like to spend the last couple of minutes telling you about the Google Play Security Reward Program. So the Google Play Security Reward Program, or GPSRP for short, is a bug bounty program offered by Google Play. A bug bounty program is similar to a vulnerability disclosure program, except it includes rewarding researchers monetarily for helping identify issues. GPSRP incentivizes security researchers to find and report vulnerabilities to you first, after which they can get a reward from Google. If you'd like to learn more about this, please apply to join and check out g.co/playacademy/VDP for much more detailed guidance on how to create and launch your VDP. Thanks.